Illegal immigrants are storming the Spanish border. This happened yesterday and is being called Spain stunned, Europe terrified, making President Trump let out a big sigh. What's going on? This is the main news story we're bringing you today. In other news, the conflict between Iran and the United States in the Middle East is at a standstill, but there's a glimmer of hope in two other places in the region, a breakthrough. Where are these two breakthroughs happening? Welcome to Good Morning America. I'm your host, Fang Wei. Hello to our YouTube viewers and our listeners on Sound of Hope, Silicon Valley FM 96.1. All right, let's get into it. Sorry we're starting a bit late today. Okay, so Spain has a territory in Africa, a city called Ceuta, right across the Strait of Gibraltar. Its border has completely collapsed. An army of illegal immigrants is invading by sea, just like the Normandy landings. Let's take a look at this footage first. Take a look at this. See what's actually happening here. Basically, these are people who have already landed from the sea. There's a huge number of Moroccans storming the border. Doesn't this whole scene look just like the Normandy landings? Look, as the boats get closer, wow, you can see them just start pouring out one after another, almost nonstop. It's a dramatic moment as more and more people keep coming ashore, moving forward in waves. Different sources are reporting at least 18 and as many as 34 deaths. With this kind of chaotic landing, if someone falls into the sea and drowns, nobody knows and nobody's looking out for them, right? Anyway, look at this border storming. It's intense. No one knows how many bodies might be floating out there. There's a lot of footage of this. This city is called Ceuta. Ceuta is an enclave. What's an enclave? An enclave is a piece of territory that isn't directly connected to the rest of its country. Now, the city of Ceuta only has 80,000 residents. In a single day, 100,000 people flooded in. The official count says 50,000, but in reality, the actual number has likely exceeded 100,000. So you could almost say the city fell overnight. All right, so Spain has declared a state of emergency in Ceuta and has sent in more troops to reinforce the border. We can see here the situation with the military arriving on the scene. At the same time, look at the crowd storming the border below. It's terrifying. And above them are the emergency troops Spain deployed to Ceuta. Meanwhile, Italy, Finland, and Denmark have all said they want to cut Spain out of the Schengen area. That's the border-free travel zone in Europe. Basically, they're saying if you break into Spain, you can't come to other European countries. The result is that Spain is stunned and Europe is absolutely terrified. And what would the United States say? The U.S. says, I told you so. What's really going on? Let's break down the details of this event that has shocked all of Europe. First, let's look at the broader context. The Spanish Prime Minister is Pedro Sanchez. He's someone who has consistently implemented very lenient policies toward illegal immigration. So, in 2018, when the Sanchez government took office, they ran into this situation where Italy refused to accept a ship, this ship called the Aquarius, with several hundred rescued migrants on board. Okay. And then in that situation, the Sanchez government just said, well, we'll take them. If Italy doesn't want them, we do. This move immediately established such a humanitarian and open image for him. Can we pull up that picture of Sanchez to take a look? Right, and besides that, then Sanchez, he also promoted the idea that immigration could help Spain's economy. He said Spain is facing serious aging and a low birth rate, so it needs immigrants to support the workforce and also to sustain the pension and welfare systems. You think about it, for him, is this argument actually right or wrong? Then in 2026, the Spanish government also implemented a major amnesty using very low screening standards to legalize a large number of illegal immigrants staying in Spain. The government says this amnesty is estimated to reach 500,000 people, but independent think tanks say it could be 840,000, and some agencies estimate over 1 million. Simply put, it's a massive amnesty. At the same time, the Sanchez government in Spain is pushing for a reform of immigration rules, planning for 300,000 immigrants to get residency and work permits every year. While it's not a full amnesty to become Spanish citizens, you can get residency and work permits. As anyone familiar with European immigration systems knows, once you get this, it's very hard to remove you. In the future, there's basically a path where if you stay long enough and don't commit crimes, you can eventually become a Spanish citizen. Now, Spain is actually very close to Africa. Let's look at this map again. It's just across the Strait of Gibraltar. But let's look at the next map. South of the Strait of Gibraltar, on the upper right corner of this southern side, there's a place called Ceuta, which is translated as Ceuta in Chinese. This is one of its enclaves. An enclave means it's not directly contiguous, separated by the Spanish Strait. But this enclave, which belongs to Spain basically, because of the Sanchez government's policies, like the amnesty and work permits we just saw, and the promotion of how important illegal immigrants are to our workforce, all of this has turned Spain into a magnet for illegal immigration, constantly drawing them in. Now, if you think the Sanchez government has gone far enough, there's something even more extreme. What is? It's a recent ruling by their Supreme Court. Because the Sanchez government, as you've heard, follows a very bizarre policy. It's different internally and externally. Internally, it's very lenient toward illegal immigrants already in the country, trying to give them a path to become Spanish citizens. But externally, he does emphasize border control and preventing illegal crossings. So he still maintains a stance of control. So this is what I would call a self-contradictory policy that defies common sense. Being lenient internally will definitely create a huge incentive for immigration, for illegal immigration, right? It makes your external controls impossible to maintain. It's like internal suction versus external blocking. Isn't that self-defeating? But both of these are political correctness for the Sanchez government, because leniency toward illegal immigrants means we respect human rights. But at the same time, you can't be completely without borders. At least he hasn't gone that far yet. So control is still needed. Thus, it's like the left hand fighting the right, internal versus external. So how did this specifically break out this time? Well, as you know, for those pouring into Ceuta from Africa, land doesn't work because Spain has a law, a border rule, that says you can't cross a physical barrier. If you cross it and get stopped by border police, you can be deported immediately without going through individual case hearings. What does individual case hearing mean? It means if you have a mass influx, I have to process each one individually. That's just not feasible, right? If tens of thousands come in at once, and I have to let each one file an application, defend themselves, and find a lawyer, processing them one by one would take centuries. It's impossible. Therefore, on land, if you cross a physical barrier to enter, you can be sent back the way you came. But the sea route is different, At sea and on the beaches, current Spanish law doesn't state that there are any physical barriers there. So if illegal immigrants or illegal stowaways come in by sea, they haven't violated Spanish law or your border control rules. So once I'm in, you have to give me the right to apply. And what is this right to apply? First, the government must issue a formal ruling. Second, to make this ruling, the government must provide the stowaway with a lawyer and a translator, then follow the whole due process. Detention over 3 days requires a judge's approval to continue. And unaccompanied minors must be assigned a guardian, which is all well and good. Then, if they stay too long, they need to work and earn money, so you have to give them a work permit. So because of these things, since there's no physical barrier at sea, a lot of people can just pour in that way. Consequently, this matter was taken to court. As a result, the Spanish Supreme Court issued a ruling in July, earlier this month, that prohibits authorities from deporting those who arrive by sea. Okay, the Spanish government even said, well, I have drone surveillance and other ways to monitor incoming boats and turn them back. The court said that doesn't count. That's not allowed. That's not considered a physical barrier. Anyway, for those coming in by sea, you can't deport them immediately. You must give them a chance to appeal. So why did the High Court rule this way? Actually, you can't just say they're more leftist. More accurately, they're a bunch of pedants because the rules don't say it. There's just no physical barrier at sea. So human rights laws, European human rights laws, require that you must give anyone who arrives the right to appeal. So for every person, you have to grant that right, and only then can you send them away. It's the same if 10 people come or if 100,000 people come. So when they all come in at once, you have to process them one by one, not send them back, but handle each individually. The result is you can't send them back at all, which goes against common sense. It's just like the U.S. Supreme Court's birthright citizenship ruling, clearly an absurd violation of common sense. But they say that's how it was before, so that's how it is now. That's what happened in the Wong Kim Art case, so we'll do the same. This is a ruling from the United States Supreme Court. For the Spanish High Court, it's saying the European human rights law is like that, so we'll be like that. And the result? Well, this is the critical moment. The smuggling ring seized on this loophole in the Supreme Court's ruling and heavily promoted that there's a path by sea. Seized the chance to break through quickly. We'll provide you with boats. Encouraging everyone to smuggle themselves in, and the smuggling fees must be incredibly cheap because many people, they follow what's called the coastline and walk to the border of what's called Ceuta, but they can't get across, right? On land, then they just take a boat to cross, Just cross a little bend, cross to its coastline, and board directly. It's exactly the situation you all just saw, like a Normandy landing with speedboats rushing the beach. So 12,000 people in 1 hour, 80,000 to 100,000 rushing in a day. So it's still ongoing, still developing. So it's not just large-scale landings by sea, but also on land. You see, after the back of one garbage truck after another is raised, over here, this scene was filmed in Morocco. Look, the Moroccan police don't even care. It's like they're transporting them, a bit like the Mexicans, how they escort people to rush the gates, rush the southern United States border. It's such a bizarre thing. So why do they still dare to rush the gates on land? Because so many people have come. How would you know how I got here, right? So they don't just rush the gate on land, and I don't even have to pay for that speedboat, right? So this is the absurd situation that has emerged. And then the relevant reporters said that within a few hours, the Moroccan police basically took no intervention policy, allowing large numbers of people to cross the border smoothly. While in the Spanish area, the local police were paralyzed, completely overwhelmed by the surging crowds. It wasn't until Prime Minister Sanchez ordered the military to take over the situation and close the border that things were brought under control. Okay, there's also a netizen online, John Buckley. I think his comment makes a lot of sense. Let me tell you about it. He said this. He said, "Did you notice? Not a single one of these people brought any luggage, no clothes at all. Some are only wearing shorts. So where do these 100,000 people plan to get clothes, food, and shelter? Of course, they expect the Spanish government to provide them with everything." They rushed over with that kind of peace of mind. And of course, Prime Minister Sanchez and the Interior Minister also rushed to CU Ceuta to inspect the situation. When he walked into the Ceuta city government, he was, by the locals, these people, called booed. He was booed. Everyone, take a listen to this video clip, the recording. Can you see it? Yeah. In short, the Spanish people, he's also looking quite dejected. And for the local people, it's like their homes were destroyed overnight. And then now Sanchez says he wants to cooperate with the Moroccan authorities to repatriate irregular immigrants as soon as possible, especially those who arrived yesterday, to let them return to their countries of origin as quickly as possible. Easier said than done. If you try to deport anyone, they'll just sue in court. What do you do once the court rules? Okay, so meanwhile, this whole thing has really stunned Sanchez, but has absolutely terrified Europe. France immediately ordered tighter controls on its border with Spain. They're deploying rapid border intervention units. If migrants start moving toward French territory, they'll tighten the border lockdown. Italian Prime Minister Meloni said we need to kick Spain out of the Schengen area now. What is the Schengen area? The Schengen area is Europe's common border system. Once someone legally enters one Schengen country, they can travel to others without routine passport checks, just like traveling within a single country across all of Europe. So right, Meloni was terrified, you know? And she wasn't the only one. The Danish Prime Minister, Frederiksen, also said we need to kick Spain out too. Finland was the first to speak up, saying we should cut Spain out. So this has really stunned Spain, terrified Europe, and what about the United States? It's left the United States sighing. Trump said one thing. He said if the wrong side takes power, this will be our situation in 3 years. Wow, what do you think? Musk's comments were even more interesting. He said, do you see that? It's all young men crossing. This is called, what was it called? It's military-aged men crossing. This is an invasion. Look at this scene. Everyone's watching. Isn't it terrifying? Swarming in, carrying nothing at all. Not a single thing. No clothes, no luggage, nothing. No toothpaste, no toothbrush. He just knows once he arrives, the Spanish government will give him everything. This is the Sanchez government, turning itself into a massive magnet for illegal immigrants, and then he still tries to control the border. Is that even possible? Yeah. Okay, well, next, I'll tell you about how, amid the standoff in Iran, there's a glimmer of hope in two other places in the Middle East. The first is the Gaza Strip. All right, let's pause here for a moment to share something related to daily health maintenance. A few days ago, a longtime viewer contacted our customer service. He said he originally just wanted to try it out, and bought one box of Jeju Island Red Sea cucumber. He didn't expect that after eating it for a while, he'd now be on a subscription. He joked, "How did I become so dependent on this stuff after eating it?" Well, that's certainly the greatest endorsement for the product. Another viewer, it was his sister, she'd had back discomfort for years. Oh, and tried many methods, but the condition just kept recurring. Later, he bought a few boxes of Red Sea cucumber and sent them to her to try out. After his sister took it for a while, she felt it really helped her daily well-being, and now she's already started on the second box. So what exactly makes Red Sea cucumber so special? And why specifically Jeju Island Red Sea cucumber? What's the deal with its nutritional content and production process? We won't explain these questions ourselves. We'll have an expert do it. Limelight Yupin has specially prepared an online sharing session specifically for Red Sea cucumber subscription members, The time is Saturday, August 8th. That's next Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, held online. That day, there will be firsthand sharing from the Jeju Island field trip, and a PhD in nutrition will personally explain the ingredients and production process of Red Sea cucumber. Also, the exclusive member gifts are ready for everyone. They're all set for you. So those who are already subscribed members should keep an eye on your inbox, your email. The invitation emails have been sent out, so remember to complete your registration before August 2nd. The registration link is in the description box below the program. Just click it to sign up. If you're not a subscriber yet but are curious about Red Sea cucumber, you can also click the link below the video to learn more details first. And now, if you use the promo code FANGWAY, you can get 15% off for the first month. And after starting a monthly subscription, you'll get 20% off for the second month. All right, I highly recommend everyone give it a try, okay? Okay, now let's get back to today's news. So the latest news is this. President Trump posted a tweet this morning, and I'll read the gist of it for you. It's about the Peace Commission today, that Board of Peace, a peace commission Trump established in the Middle East. He's using I'll speak for him. I'll say what's in his heart. He wants to gradually use this to replace the UN's Peace Commission. He said we've reached a historic agreement, achieving the complete disarmament of Hamas and all armed groups in Gaza. This is a major step toward lasting peace and security. This agreement is a crucial step toward Gaza eventually being governed by a new Palestinian government. At the same time, Israel will gain its security, and Gaza can no longer be a base for terrorist attacks. He said this is a major milestone in President Trump's 20-point plan. This agreement will be implemented in carefully designed phases. With the completion of Hamas's disarmament, the Israeli military will withdraw, and an international stabilization force will work with the new Palestinian police force to ensure Gaza's security. The tweet says that a year ago, this was still a fierce war, a humanitarian crisis, and a brutal captivity for hostages. We've made historic progress, but there's still a lot of work to be done. I want to thank the mediators, Egypt, Qatar, and Turkey, for their significant efforts, especially my outstanding team, whose tireless work made this historic breakthrough possible. Finally, he said the threat that emerged from Gaza on October 7th must absolutely never be allowed to reappear. Okay. According to President Trump's arrangement, the agreement first requires the cessation of all military operations in Gaza, then the disarmament and decommissioning of the many weapons held by Hamas, and then the closure of the tunnels dug by Hamas in the Gaza area, and the weapon production facilities. U.S. officials and Peace Commission officials stated that the Palestinian police force has begun training to prepare to take over from Hamas in maintaining local security. U.S. and Peace Commission officials said the new government will be composed of technocrats and will remain depoliticized. However, there are still many details that need to be negotiated, because Hamas officials said the relevant arrangements are still a draft, while Israeli officials stated that the current conditions are not satisfactory. Israel's national security minister, named Ben-Gvir, spoke even more harshly, saying that this draft agreement is unacceptable to Israel. After the October 7th massacre, the life of every Hamas member is a price that should be paid. Therefore, promising to stop the elimination of this terrorist group's killers is equivalent to allowing Hamas to regroup and prepare for the next massacre. He said targeted eliminations in Gaza must continue, immigration must be encouraged, and Israel must be victorious. Well, as for the United States side, American officials say that although disarmament, withdrawal, and reconstruction are very difficult, the United States will continue to push for and implement the agreement in all its stages. Okay, so this United States official said this is an almost impossible task. But then again, we've already created several miracles and will remain committed to creating more miracles in the future. Right, anyway, I don't know what you think about this progress. Next is a one-sentence commentary from Feng Wei. I'll put it this way. I don't know what the final outcome of this agreement will be, whether it will succeed or not. But what I can say is that President Trump is a president who gets things done, and his people are truly persistent, working 7 days a week, so it's nonstop. So yesterday in Boston, we met with some listeners, viewers, and many of them are longtime Americans who've been here for 30 or 40 years, and we all felt the same way when we talked. In the past, previous United States presidents only had a major event every month or two, but now major events are happening nonstop every week, right? That's the situation. Because President Trump's team is just like him, truly working 7 days a week. Very intensive. So without even realizing it, progress or breakthroughs are appearing in many areas. Of course, we all hope that Gaza can stabilize and move away from being manipulated by Hamas so it can transition to peace. Okay, besides Gaza, what's happening with the Houthis in the south? Okay, so now the Houthis, since the Houthis announced the blockade of the Bab el-Mandeb Strait on July 20th, on July 25th, they struck sensitive oil transport sites in Saudi Arabia, connecting the eastern province oil fields to the Red Sea export hub, and then hit 3 Saudi oil tankers. Okay, so what's the latest news? Saudi Arabia is preparing to launch a major land and sea military offensive against the Houthis. Yemeni forces have begun mobilizing and concentrating troops, possibly launching an attack on the Houthis from central Yemen. Saudi forces have observed a withdrawal from eastern Yemen, which could be in preparation for a land offensive southward from northern Yemen, which is south of Saudi Arabia. At the same time, Saudi Arabia is forming a naval coalition to protect Red Sea shipping from Houthi attacks in the Red Sea and the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. The Saudi Ministry of Defense said yesterday that 14 countries, including Turkey, Pakistan, Egypt, Sudan, and Djibouti, have issued a joint statement supporting a multinational maritime defense alliance, which is the Red Sea escort fleet currently being formed. Saudi Arabia has also asked the United States and several European countries, including Germany, France, the United Kingdom, and Italy, to join its Red Sea coalition. We all know the Red Sea handles 12% of global shipping and 7% of oil shipping. And here's a very interesting piece of news for you to see. Data from marine traffic shows that on July 30th, only 5 ships passed through the Strait of Hormuz, so it is basically blocked, compared to 22 ships the day before. Look at the chart below. The left is the Strait of Hormuz and the right is the Bab el-Mandeb. Shipping in the Strait of Hormuz has dropped to almost no ships passing through due to the conflict between the United States and Iran. But look at the right side. Yesterday, 47 ships still passed through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. So traffic in the Bab el-Mandeb Strait is still active. That is what it means. So what does this mean? It means that basically, even though the Houthis announced the blockade of the Bab el-Mandeb and threatened Saudi Arabia, they're mostly just putting on a show. They have not gone all out, because doing so would invite disaster. Even so, they are still inviting disaster upon themselves. Now, Saudi Arabia has started teaming up with the Yemeni government for a ground offensive. We will see what happens next, and if this ground offensive yields any results. What is the biggest psychological burden for Saudi Arabia in attacking the Houthis? It is that the Saudi troops are not that strong. Although they have great pay and advanced United States weaponry, they just don't know how to fight. And the Houthis are a bit like the Afghan guerrillas, like the Taliban. Although they lack weapons and funding, they are mountain guerrillas, so a ground force could suffer heavy casualties, which is why Saudi Arabia has been so hesitant. Last time, they fought for nearly 9 years, mostly with airstrikes. They did not dare engage in direct combat, fearing the losses would be too great. But regardless, If the Houthis really think they can challenge a superior power by blocking a Red Sea as a small local warlord, that is quite bold. Will they be wiped out? Let us just wait and see. Okay, also, what is the follow up after Dr. Fauci's hearing? I will tell you quickly. Fauci testified in the Senate the day before yesterday, right? He invoked the Fifth Amendment over 100 times, refusing to answer more than 100 questions about the COVID pandemic. Then, a few hours later, Florida's Attorney General, James Youthmeyer, announced an investigation into Fauci. This is a state-level investigation. Uthmeyer's statement was blunt, saying Fauci's lack of candor with Congress was unbelievable. We should have figured out what exactly happened during COVID a long time ago. You know, President Biden's pardon for Fauci only applies at the federal level. He cannot control the states. So if a state has cause, they can sue Fauci. So President Biden's pardon can't exactly cover for Fauci or protect him. So Florida is the first state-level prosecutor to launch an investigation into Fauci. In other states, other red states, the same thing might happen. Meanwhile, Senator Rand Paul is pushing for a contempt of Congress resolution, which he says might be referred to the Department of Justice. Is that possible? This contempt of Congress, the reasoning behind it makes sense, because over 100 times he refused to answer questions. He wouldn't even answer, whether you're guilty or what color tie you're wearing. So it really can't be called contempt of Congress. But making this happen is almost impossible because it has to pass 4 hurdles. First, the Homeland Security Committee must pass it by a majority. This is Rand Paul's committee, so that's very likely. Second, the full Senate must pass it. How does the Senate pass it? If they filibuster you, you're stuck. You can't get 60 votes, right? Third, after the Senate passes it, the DOJ has to approve it. I think that's highly probable, as President Trump is willing to do it. Fourth, a grand jury must approve it before an indictment. A grand jury. So regardless of whether this can be achieved, Fauci, in this matter, indeed, after the hearing the day before yesterday, I think the result is that his credibility is bankrupt. That's the situation. Okay, next, let's talk about a presidential schedule just released by the White House. President Trump will hold a cabinet meeting on Friday, which is today, at the presidential retreat, Camp David in Maryland. The last time President Trump held a cabinet meeting was in May of this year. He wanted to hold it at Camp David then, but due to bad weather, it was moved back to the White House. I want to mention 2 things here. One is that past U.S. presidents often held meetings, vacations, and met foreign envoys at Camp David. We're all familiar with it. But Trump just never goes to Camp David. Since taking office for his second term, all 11 cabinet meetings have been at the White House, so he's never been to Camp David. So going to Camp David this weekend is quite interesting. So why the change in attitude? I'll explain at the end. I'll take this opportunity to introduce the history of Camp David to everyone. It's actually a very interesting place. Before President Trump, everyone knew it well. It was always in the news. Since Trump took office, it's disappeared, and you mostly hear about Mar-a-Lago. What exactly is Camp David? Well, Camp David, in English, it's Camp David. It's the official mountain retreat and site for diplomatic talks for the U.S. president. It's located in Maryland in a place called Catoctin Mountain. Where is this place? Go north from D.C. for about 60 miles, which is roughly 100 kilometers. It was originally built in the 1930s by the U.S. government as a federal employee retreat. At the time, it was called High Catoctin. Then, in 1942, during World War II, President Roosevelt chose it as the Presidential Mountain Retreat. Its name back then was Shangri-La. The name Shangri-La was taken from the fictional paradise in the novel called Lost Horizon. So how did the name change from Shangri-La to Camp David? Well, it has to do with President Eisenhower. Eisenhower, took office in 1953. After he took office, he heard that, hey, the president has a special facility in the Catoctin Mountains. He wanted to shut it down and give it back to the state of Maryland because our president doesn't need these unnecessary luxuries. As it turned out, his attorney general, Brownell, led the Department of Justice to inspect the place because you have to take a look before closing it. After seeing it, once he went there, he was completely captivated. So he came back to report to the president. To convince the president to change his mind, he specifically submitted what he jokingly called an executive petition for clemency. And then he said, today, this petition is to defend a certain party. He said, this party says that if he's convicted by the White House without a hearing and then shut down, he'll be sentenced to embarrassment, humiliation, and the punishment of being transferred or even eliminated. So please, you must hear his story out. The president said, huh, is it really that good? So Ike, that's President Eisenhower, personally led a team to what's now called Camp David for an inspection in May of 1953. After the inspection, wow, as you might expect, he was also captivated. So this mountaintop retreat was preserved. Even though President Roosevelt and President Truman, his two predecessors, both called the place Shangri-La, Eisenhower named it Camp David. Why? Because he took his grandson there, and his grandson loved the place. His grandson's name was David Eisenhower, so it was named Camp David after his grandson. Well, after the name change, the Democrats at the time were very unhappy. Rumors spread that after Eisenhower left office, when our president takes over, we'll have to change the name back to Shangri-La. As it turned out, sure enough, after Eisenhower left, President Kennedy took office. But Kennedy thought about it and said, forget it, let's just leave it as it is. So he didn't change it back. The name Camp David has been kept from that time until now. So during President Eisenhower's time, Camp David underwent large-scale renovations and construction because he really liked the place. Picnic tables, outdoor cooking areas, bomb shelters, and a projection room were all added during the renovation. The most notable new facility was a three-hole golf course. It couldn't be 18 holes because the place isn't that big. It's just a retreat. And its greens were modeled after Eisenhower's two favorite courses. In 1955, it was carefully crafted for Eisenhower. So in late 1955, Eisenhower had a heart attack. During his recovery, he stayed at Camp David. He held cabinet meetings there, including 4 National Security Council meetings. He was also the first president to take a helicopter to Camp David. It's a 60-mile trip, so instead of driving, he just flew there by helicopter. So in this way, the commuting time was shortened from the original 2 hours to just 30 minutes, making it very convenient to come and go. He hosted the French president of that time, de Gaulle, the Mexican president, the Colombian president, and the British Prime Minister, Harold Macmillan. You know, those prime ministers after Churchill. The most famous visit by a foreign head of state was Soviet Premier Khrushchev, who came to this place in September 1959. Now, Khrushchev was initially, well, at first, very suspicious about the location of this meeting. The reason for his suspicion? What was it? It was because of his name, Camp David, you know. At that time, Camp David wasn't yet the world-famous presidential weekend and holiday retreat. He thought the name sounded like a place where stray dogs were sent to be put down. Camp David. See if that makes sense to you. As it turned out, well, he eventually came anyway. You know, when the host invites you, you have to show up. After he arrived, it turned out Eisenhower and Khrushchev had a very pleasant conversation there. And then after the talks, the media coined a term called the spirit of Camp David. When this term was coined, Eisenhower saw it in the media and said, what is that? I don't even know about it. You say we have the spirit of Camp David here. What is it? The media explained to him that it meant a place where you can talk things out without using foul language. Like you and Khrushchev, two Cold War rivals, you can argue, but without the profanity. The Soviet side really liked this term. Later, they condemned any Western actions they disliked as a violation of the spirit of Camp David. Then Eisenhower said, I don't even know where this term came from. I've never used the phrase spirit of Camp David. In short, the Soviet Union basically wanted to exploit it. They created a term to encourage Western appeasement, so they came up with this spirit of Camp David. The reason was the atmosphere of the conversation when he met with Eisenhower at Camp David. Eisenhower went there 50 times in 8 years. He went once every 2 months. Do you know how many times President Trump went in 16 months of his term? He went once, and not a single cabinet meeting was held there. So, as everyone knows, Trump loves vacationing at Mar-a-Lago. Mar-a-Lago is the Southern White House, and he also likes hosting foreign guests there. Besides, he prefers holding his cabinet meetings at the White House. Okay, the most famous event at Camp David was in 1978, the Camp David Accords, hosted by President Carter. It facilitated a peace agreement between Egyptian President Sadat and Israeli Prime Minister Begin, which led to the signing of the 1979 Egypt-Israel Peace Treaty. They both received, what was it called? The Nobel Peace Prize. So since then, Camp David has become very famous, becoming synonymous with the modern American presidency and international diplomacy. Until President Trump, put it on ice. Now, starting from the day, it seems it's going to be thawed out. As you know, when President Trump holds a press conference at the White House, the reporters are all right there in front. They meet here and the reporters are there. Halfway through, they close the doors and talk privately. So it's very open. So I'm also curious, for a cabinet meeting at Camp David, will he transport a whole group of reporters there too? If so, it'll be the first time these modern day reporters get to see Camp David again. Let's just wait and see what happens next. Okay, let me tell you why today's show is late. It's because yesterday I went to Boston and met with our friends from the founding journey. After the meeting, I headed back and didn't get in until 2 or 3 in the morning. So I'm a bit late this morning. But I had a really great time there. Just to give you a quick update, there were young people who traveled all the way from Taiwan, and even a cancer patient who wanted to understand what America is all about in their lifetime. Of course, we hope that for our listeners, even those battling cancer, that everything turns out for the best, that they find peace and live long, healthy lives. Anyway, I've been hearing a lot of great feedback. Some of the feedback I got was, Feng Wei, there are just too many shows. Others said, there aren't enough shows, please don't cut back. Some people say your shows are too long, and others say the shows aren't long at all. So I've posted 2 polls in my community. Could you all take a look after the show? I want to see what everyone's reaction is. Because sometimes you're just too close to it, As a host, sometimes it's hard to know exactly where to draw the line. So if you leave me a comment there, it'll give me some great feedback. It's basically a poll. Right, and also, I'd like to ask everyone, we'll look at your comments and questions in a bit. Regarding the border storming in Spain, could you all leave a comment? Just a quick word. Why? It's a way to gauge public opinion. What's your take on this border storming incident in Spain? Leave a 1-sentence comment. If you're in Spain or anywhere in Europe, it'll be even better if you could write a bit more, okay? Yes, thank you all so much. Let's take a look. Mo Wang Yanji Bo says, Europe's biggest problem is the invasion. Someone enters one member state and can then move to others, like cancer spreading. That's why I say Europe is going to fall apart if this continues. Well, that's exactly why Italy, Denmark, and Finland are rushing to close their borders. Sophia Lamb says, it seems that so far, the mainstream media hasn't called them illegal immigrants, only using the term migrant, not realizing how serious the problem is. Yeah, that's right. If you look at search engines, European media, or U.S. mainstream media, no one uses the term illegal immigrant. And Chinese, we call them stowaways, but no one uses that word either. It's always migrant. It's treated as normal, just called immigrants, dropping the illegal part. So this is what the media is reflecting. The entire West has been pushing this globalization and immigration, and it's truly unbelievable. It really goes against common sense. So you think your compassion is so great, huh? You're even denying the countries, the nation's borders. Currently, the world is organized by nations. A nation encompasses its systems, history, traditions, and civilization. You say you can just discard all that for universal harmony? If your kindness is so great, why don't you open your home and let your neighbors just come in and live with you, right? And then invite all the homeless people from the street in, one big family, right? It's just not realistic. It's not that kindness is bad, but you have to be realistic. Right. You can't reach a point where there are no principles, where there's no distinction at all. So this is the absurdity happening in the world now. This kind of absurdity can actually sweep across the entire European continent. In short, it's truly beyond belief. And this school of thought is mainstream worldwide. These absurd, counterintuitive ideas are the mainstream globally. Actually, the United States is an outlier. With Trump, it became an outlier. He's a strange one. He's bucking the trend. He's like a pillar resisting this entire downward tide, what we call a mainstay. So, because the United States is powerful enough and President Trump is strong enough, a state of counterbalance can be formed. But actually, with the overall trend going this way, it's truly very, very absurd. Absurd and terrifying. This kind of border collapse, it's like the fall of an entire city. Of course, it's not easy for them to rush into Ceuta and go directly to Spain from there, as it's separated by the Strait of Gibraltar. But regardless, once they're in, once you're in, you have to protect me, you have to let me appeal, and from then on, I just get to stay forever. That's what they're counting on. Why else would they risk everything to storm the border, right? So this is the pit Europe dug for itself, trapping itself. And then, once they're in, they don't even call them illegal immigrants. You say it's a border, but what's the difference between flying in through customs and jumping off a raft at sea and just walking in? Is there no difference? So I really invite everyone to leave a comment and express your views on this matter. All of our comments also become part of the public opinion on social media today. I think that's meaningful. Okay, Don Wildy says, fortunately, America's borders are secure. He said he was stunned, thanks to Trump for making America great again. Yes, true. So President Trump also said America might end up like this in 3 years. Dan Yebing says, but I hope that won't happen. Dan Yebing says if the U.S. Constitution isn't changed, once Trump is gone, it'll be just like Spain. Right, so the United States is indeed also in a state of intense struggle, whether to go left or right. It's at a certain crossroads. Malyan Jibo asks, how is Sanchez going to talk his way out of this one? Yeah, how will he? He's over there saying we'll deport him. If you could do it, you would have done it already, right? But you can't. As soon as someone files a lawsuit, you're paralyzed. You're still clinging to your political correctness. Jasmine Chu says it's lucky that place connects to the African continent, but is separated from mainland Spain by a strait. Otherwise, Spain would really be in trouble. Yeah, that's right. So fortunately, it's considered an enclave. The Strait of Gibraltar is very narrow, only 14 kilometers at its narrowest point, much narrower than the Taiwan Strait. Right, it's true. You take a kayak. Everyone knows back then the South Vietnamese refugees rode all the way to Hong Kong. It's quite far, very far. I don't know how many kilometers, maybe 800? It was truly a desperate escape across the sea. Many people escaped that way. When I was working in Silicon Valley, my colleagues at that tech company, they were just like that. So really, but for those Vietnamese people, it was different. Back then, the doors weren't just wide open. They were what the U.S. called sympathizers, people who helped the U.S., so they were allowed in. Right, when they first arrived, dozens of them were squeezed into one house. Later, as they grew up, they started businesses and did very well. So legal immigration is great. For many countries, legal immigration truly has a positive impact because you can screen them, right? Or you have a goal. You can't just abandon all standards out of some sense of universal benevolence. So it's not like that at all. Benevolence without principles is what Confucius once called a hypocrite, right? The thief of virtue. It corrupts morality, destroying it in the very name of morality. Okay, He-Ming Jiao said he checked yesterday, and contempt of Congress can also be a criminal offense. A few years ago, Bannon was sentenced to 4 months in prison for contempt of Congress. Right, but for a couple, it's very hard, very difficult. Right, because at that time, Congress wasn't in the, It wasn't in Republican hands. Robert says he likes it when Feng Wei tells historical anecdotes. Ah, thank you. Which part was it? Was it about that? About Camp David? The story of Camp David is quite interesting. I'm wondering when I can go visit it. It's probably not open to the public. Anyway, Xi Yongsheng says Merkel must bear the greatest responsibility. Right, she made a big decision then, which was, we can do it. She said, we can do it on behalf of Germany. That was back in 2015, right? When the borders were open, Germany was the big player in Europe, the big brother, money and everything else came from Germany. When Germany said we're opening the doors, Europe had no choice but to follow, even until today. Without Trump, if America collapses, the world collapses with it, pretty much. The world hasn't collapsed yet, but leftist countries are already like this. It's hard to imagine if America collapses. So America's the last stand. America is the last bastion of traditional Western civilization. Everyone in America, I think, Don't you feel we all have a responsibility? So I'm still calling on everyone. Until the very last moment, you must write to your senators, write to John Johnson. No, not Johnson, sorry. Write to Thune. Everyone needs to do this. Now, senators are publicly calling for no August recess, no vacation in August. We should pass the Save America Act in August. So, right, from the common people, from the grassroots to the senators, everyone should do what needs to be done. So President Trump said if that side wins in 3 years, it will be a similar situation. That sounds truly shocking. I just saw the latest. All of Europe is pretty much like Spain. And then Smart Picky said they just saw the latest news photos. Those people have started burning cars and causing trouble. You know, at the southern border, crossing the Texas border, I once went to the Texas-Mexico border for an interview. After crossing at farms about 2 miles from the border, illegal immigrants come in and just take everything. They run straight to the farms to grab chickens, steal your things. The farmer doesn't dare move inside, probably clutching a gun, afraid he'll break in. In the end, he's just holding his gun, only able to defend his own bedroom. People are passing through his yard every day, so he can't live his life. You know, it's almost like an invasion. This is communism. You build it up, and I come to divide the money. That's what Mike Lou said, you know? Summer. Wait, the left wing here is just doing it for votes to stay in power forever. That's why they let these illegal immigrants in. It's not out of kindness. Right, everyone. Kindness? I'm saying it's just their excuse, right? Right, but this coming in is for voting. That's how it is in the U.S. You know, during Biden's 4 years, he intentionally opened the border. His goal was to let the men in, give them benefits, and then, since elections in many states are very loose, they can become voters. Do y'all remember back before, during Biden's 4 years, every day they were crossing mountains, you know, these illegal immigrants flooding across the border. Of course, it wasn't as scary as it looks today, but it was constant. And then the Border Patrol has to deal with it. How do you deal with it? You just gather them together, process them, and then send them to a detention center. At that time, you feel like the Border Patrol, you're not a patrol team. You're practically a border crossing service, right? It's just completely absurd. So for Western civilization to be threatened like this is really hard to believe. We all know that in the past, this Western civilization, just like the Republic of China, was overthrown by war. Another version of communism is in this form, using votes, using a kind posture to do this. So isn't it a thief of virtue, a thief who corrupts morality in the name of morality? All right, thank you all so much for your comments. These comments are all part of public opinion, so please, everyone, leave a comment, okay? Leave your thoughts on this situation in Spain. If you're a viewer from Spain or Europe, I especially invite you to share your thoughts. Of course, it's no problem if your view's different from mine. Right, let's discuss it together, shall we? And finally, I've posted a few things in the community for feedback on Feng Wei's program, so everyone is welcome to go fill that out. All right, and lastly, for our new viewers, please click subscribe, okay? Subscribe and hit the bell icon so you won't miss any of Feng Wei's future programs. Okay, that's all for now. Thanks for watching, everyone. See you in the next program. Bye-bye.